Hi, Vanessa. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julia. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, really excited to have you. I think lots of our listeners probably heard you speak at the Reimagining Health Summit. We had you within the CPC program last week, and loving that we're getting your message and some of your wisdom out to our listeners a little bit in a broader sense today. So thanks for being here. What I would love for you to do to start is, could you share with our listeners a little bit about kind of what brought you to IHP, a little bit of that story, and then if you could share a little bit with what you're kind of currently doing within that space now.
Absolutely. So I'm sure a lot of listeners are going to relate to my story. I built my first business really in the hustle mode, thinking that it had to look a certain way, and so I was really really deep into, I'll call it the over masculine, over productive train. I had medical clinics. And so, also was building a brick and mortar in the aesthetic field. And then eventually we sold that company, and my body completely shut down at that point. It's as if my body knew that I had been tolerating a way of being that was so out of alignment with who I truly was. And so I was given the label burnout, but now I know that it really was pure misalignment that I was tolerating. And it's in that journey, of course, after seeing, so many physicians trying to get back, on track. I thought, well, I'm not productive right now. I can't wake up in the morning. I'm so tired. I've lost my, my spark. What's going on? And all I was given by physicians was either a antidepressant prescription, or I was told that's just aging, get used to it. And I thought, wait a minute, no. And I was really, taking care of myself already. I was eating well, I was doing all the things. I was meditating. But one thing I never really contemplated was the amount of suppressed emotions that were in my body. And at one point, I don't know how, but of course, there was a divine intervention. I stumbled upon Dr. Cabral's podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh. I would listen. I was like listening to all of it, and it was resonating. And I thought, okay, maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe I need to become an IHP to heal myself, because nobody can seem to figure out what's wrong with me. And it's in that journey that really so much opened for me. I realized how it was so much deeper than what we are told. And that's really when I started my journey, within, and looking at particularly the emotion piece and the detoxing piece. That was like a big aha for me. And so I started doing all the protocols back to back nonstop for years. And then I found my light back. I really found my light back, and I found my spark. Women started asking me if I could coach them and help them find their light again. And that's really how coaching found me. That's how this new business that I have right now found me. When I signed up for IHP, it was truly for me. And I remember Dr. Cabral would always say, we need an IHP in each family. And I was like, great, that's me, that's all I thought of it. But clearly there was something else that wanted to come forward through that. And so right now I still use my IHP knowledge to help women, but I particularly combine my business acumen and building my first multi-million-dollar business. And I combined now this knowledge of the body to allow women to build an aligned business where their body is not collapsing anymore. So that's where we look under the hood. And of course, my knowledge as an IHP is utilized every day. But I'm a little bit different in the way I use it, not in the traditional sense where, I have done it where I was really helping people with the root cause. And now I've given it my own twist. So I use it a little bit differently, but still very much connected to the body.
Yes, of course. And it's all aspects, right? I think IHP, even though it's a lot focused physiologically and on the systems of the body, there is a huge piece where, we acknowledge the emotions and all of that, right? Because there's so many clients that I've worked with in the past that we do all the protocols and there's still something, the needle's not moving as far as we would have thought. And oftentimes it is the repressed emotions, the, unspoken truth, the not living in alignment, all of those things. And oftentimes that is just as important for physical well-being as, fixing the gut terrain and all of that.
Absolutely. And that's been my experience too. So for me, it's so important. And it's all the aspect of the energetics as well that I love now. So the energetics is basically all the invisible energies that are at play that are influenced by, the limiting beliefs or the thoughts that you have about yourself. And I always give the analogy that your energetic field is like a bubble around you. And that bubble walks into any room before you. And that feeling when sometimes someone walks in the room and you're like, oh, and everybody looks at that person. And then similarly, when someone walks in and you're like, oh, that's energetics. That person hasn't said a word. They haven't done anything. They just walked into the room. And that's the subtle, invisible energies that actually influence everything in life. And so I'm very fascinated. I use that a lot in the way I help my clients.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. And I think so many IHPs can resonate with the sense of that, because a lot of women, I think especially, but even men too, who come into this space in this field are empathic by nature. They might be introverts, they might be deep feelers. And sometimes, the standard business advice that can come from, do this first and then do that. And your website should look this way. And, I once said to someone, I just need it to feel right. Like, I don't know, recently getting my website changed. They're like, okay, so what don't you like? And I was like, I don't actually know. I don't think it's the font. It just doesn't feel like me. They were like, I have no idea what you're saying, right? Because they were a little bit more of like an analytical type. And so I think there's a lot of IHPs who can kind of sense that. And I think when we were doing the talk with the CPC students, you had said a few things and a lot of their faces lit up in a way that I didn't see their faces light up. And we were just talking, standard data as far as like, okay, this is how you read that lab and this is how you read that. And I would love to bring a little bit of that to our listeners, because I was like, everybody should hear this, because I think a lot of them are really inspired. So if we can, the first kind of little topic that I would love to dive into is, you said something that a lot of them in the chat immediately started like, oh my gosh, this resonates, to talk a little bit more about this. And it was that your ideal business will heal you.
Yes.
Can you expand on that and kind of what that means, to you and to how you think it's beneficial?
And that phrase, I coined that after it literally happened to me. And I then witnessed all my clients doing that. So I truly believe that when you are fully allowing yourself to share your story, to share, the hardships that you've been through in your life, and you actually give yourself permission to bring that into your business instead of making it look like maybe the box we've told you it has to look like, you should always do business this way. And like the old paradigm, basically, of success, which is mainly, again, I'm not here, nothing wrong with men, but the truth is, there's a lot of IHP women that are trying to run their IHP practices like men, and we just aren't the same. We're cyclical by nature. Our output is not always the same, and feeling is really important. And so for me, when when women started reaching out to me, they were asking me about their energy. And so I started working with energy, but then I felt like, there's something missing. I was basically doing just the IHP stuff. And then eventually one of my mentors told me, so wait a minute, you built a multi-million-dollar business, you sold it, had global recognition, and you're not going to weave in the business into what you do? And I was like, no, I have PTSD on that. And she was like, but you're basically hiding some of your deepest codes, like some of your deepest truth. And like, basically your client is not able to receive all the wisdom that you have. And so you're actually not helping them. And that blew my mind. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Basically, I was sitting on knowledge and information and wisdom that the world needed, and that I wasn't sharing because I thought I was already, traumatized by that. And when I finally allowed myself to combine both, it took me a while to figure out, how am I going to do that? That's not going to look like anyone else. But I finally figured out, okay, how am I going to combine the IHP, the root cause, and the body connection with the business? I did it, and I felt the best. Like, it's like so much of any remnants of symptoms I had completely went away. And as the women were stepping into their true business and realigning, their bodies were flourishing, and so was mine. And I started to notice, holy cow, this is my ideal business. This is how I know. Because I feel like every time I open my camera, every time I speak, every time I'm leading a masterclass, I feel like people's resonance is a confirmation that my story happened for me. That my story, the hardships and everything that happened had to happen this way in order for me to be able to, help others not maybe have to go through the same thing. And so that's why I say my ideal business is healing me, because as each day passes, I'm not in that doing, oh, I got to do the business, I got to do this. I'm not into that at all. I'm connected to the energy of my why. Why am I doing this? And I'm connected to the energy of, like, I know that there is light in this that is here to help others remember their own light as well, and give them permission to do the same. So that's basically how this phrase found me, and I'm so grateful.
And I think it kind of all goes back to kind of being in your truth, and when you don't, it doesn't feel hard when you're just showing up as all of yourself, rather than trying to kind of make yourself fit into what you think success is supposed to look like, or what the other people who are doing successful things and have what you want looks like. And we kind of forget that instead of like reaching always out for those things, like they all are inside, and we just have to.
That's it. And you just said something about your website. You said it's not about how it looks, it's how it feels. And I also always say this. Often when our business is feeling like heavy, right? Like, the feeling like, it's usually not because all of it is off. It's just because we're more focused on how it looks than how it feels. Mm-hmm. But really, again, in the realm of energetics, it doesn't matter how it looks, right? Because I told you, your bubble comes into the room before you. So it doesn't matter if you have the latest Prada dress and you're dressed like to the nines. It's the energy that speaks. So if you're trying to fake it until you make it, that doesn't work anymore. Mm-hmm. And so if you're listening to this is just an invitation of, what other pieces of wisdom are you sitting on that maybe you have not allowed yourself to share or weave into your business model, perhaps because it is not how traditionally it's done. Well, let me tell you, that is actually how you will stand out. It's actually how you will pierce through the noise of the online world right now.
Yes. Yeah, I'd love to shift just a little bit and talk about the kind of topic of ideal client, because I think a lot of new IHPs, or even maybe seasoned IHPs, who might still feel like, who is my message really for? Is it landing? Are they, are the right people hearing me? What is your take on kind of who you should be speaking to and how to identify those people?
Yeah. Okay. So I also have a bit of a different take on that.
Yes. Which I love, because again, if there's IHPs listening who are like, I've tried this, that, and this, and it doesn't feel right, your message might resonate.
Yes. Well, I believe it's very simple. I believe your ideal client is usually a version of you from 12 to 18 months in the past. That's it. Like, actually, when you think about it, when you're like, okay, the version of you from, let's say, a year and a half ago, what is it that you were Googling at night? What is it that was waking you up? What is it that you were asking to your friends? What is it that was like, on your heart? What is it that you wish existed? What is it that you were Googling? Yeah, like all of that is going to tell you who you're speaking to. And it's always right. It's fascinating because when you start connecting to that version of yourself, maybe you're going to realize like, oh my gosh, all she needed was to find this person or this website, or all she needed was to hear about the liver detox, or all she needed was this. And that would have, accelerated everything. Because as IHPs, ultimately, what's our role? It's to save people's time. Right? It's to save them time so that they don't have to go through all the hoops of the medical system and go through all the people not understanding and not feeling them, and to be met by someone who understands them. But really, if we're super even more precise in this as an HP, what is it that I need? I need you to be the living proof that you are the light at the end of the tunnel. And so if, for example, I've overcome, like, let's talk about someone maybe that would really be specifically an IHP and only focusing on that. Let's say I've overcome autoimmune disease or maybe like Hashimoto. Well, your ideal client, it's really not hard. It is people with Hashimoto, because you're the living proof that there's another way. You're the living proof that you're still here alive and maybe medication free, because you've looked at the terrain and all the things, you've done the work. And so then suddenly you don't have to prove, you don't have to convince anybody. You just become that beacon of light, that lighthouse for that person that is probably suffering right now. And that person who has done all the tests, have seen all the doctors, and has been told she will need to be on medication for the rest of her life. You're the living proof to be like, hey, actually, there's another path, and come closer if you want to know, right? It's that simple.
Yes. Yeah. They're borrowing your story as their hope.
That's it.
That something could be different. And I think a lot of us think that we have to be, so accomplished. And so if we think about like what you said, which was 12 to 18 months. Did you
say? I find that's usually they're right behind you.
Yep. Yeah. And not for me, that doesn't feel all that long ago. So it's accessible, right? It's not like the version of me 10 years ago where I'm like, oh man, she was something else.
But also why? Because 10 years ago, you've overcome that stuff so long ago. Like to you, it's like, it's so normal. It's like boring to even talk about it. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people keep themselves in there because they think they need to speak to like the beginners, but they forget their own evolution. There's always going to be people to speak to beginners. But if you have continued to evolve, you need to bring your evolution in the mix as well and allow your ideal client to also evolve.
Yes. And I love, so I had said something in the CPC, the little live that we did. And I said, I used the word relatability and kind of like cringed a little bit. And you were like, ooh, relatability. I don't. But I loved what you said, because again, it's so like, we can use these words so unconsciously. And my kind of connection was, now you're able to like, build connection with the client because they can feel like there's relatability. But would you share a little bit about how being just a little further ahead and actually not being so super relatable is actually what the client needs to rise?
Yes. Well, we can use the same example of Hashimoto. Okay. So let's say I have healed from it, and I'm helping clients who are in the thick of it. And I might feel like, well, it's not really fair to I should pretend it's still going not well so that they can feel like I understand and I'm eye to eye and I'm relatable to them. Are you helping them? No, you're showing them how excruciatingly painful and how it's going to take forever. They need you to be in your full posture as a leader. They need you to be in your full light. And because that's how people calibrate. Mm-hmm. In fact, here's again, if we believe in energetics and, the laws of the universe, if you stand in your full power, unapologetic, unshakable about, no, I am healed. What does this do in the field for the other person who is not? Right away, a different reality, a different dimension opens for that person. Like suddenly she's like, oh, I'm not chasing this invisible thing that the medical system told me was never going to happen. Suddenly I have living proof that it's here and it can actually happen fast. So I've already shifted my ego, my nervous system is already calibrating to this new reality as mine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why for me, when we're trying to be relatable, was that what that's showing me is really we haven't fully acknowledged the power of our true light and the power of our message. And that's very typical. Most of us carry visibility wounds, which means, we still believe that if we are not relatable, not everyone is going to like us. If we're not always perfect, then people are going to judge us. And we still believe that that has something to do with our success. Mm-hmm. When in fact, it's quite the opposite, especially right now with the rise of AI. There's nothing that the world needs more of. It's more authenticity, more you in your truth, more you in your full light and full power, because the rest I can find it on AI. Mm-hmm. I really can.
Yeah.
And the people that are struggling or scared of AI are the people that are actually not walking in their full light because they still think that their light could create trouble. It could maybe, create issues with can I really be still a good mother if I'm in all this light, and if I'm helping clients at this level, can I still be a good mother? Is this going to impact my children? We have crazy stories in the background, but really we have to realize that these are just stories.
Yes. Yeah. And what AI, even though AI can give you all of the information of how to quote unquote physically help symptoms of Hashimoto's and supplements, and what it can't do, like you said, is kind of hold this larger calibration possibility for a client who's kind of sitting face to face with you and able to borrow that energy, that hope, that and bring themselves there.
Yes. And the heart piece, of course, the connection, but people are somehow misunderstanding or thinking that not being relatable means you don't have a heart. Mm-hmm. And it's those two things are completely different. Being relatable just means you're not fully allowing yourself to let go of the people pleasing and fully stand into what you know to be true, and to know that that is enough. Mm-hmm. That truth of your lived life experience is enough to actually be able to help another human being. And because it is your truth, inevitably, you will connect with your heart because it's dear to your heart. And that is why your business will continue to heal you and evolve with you. So it's we just have to get out of the way, really, with our heads. And that's why the strategies, I love strategies, but I never lead with strategies first in my business. I always connect to how it feels, my intention, my purpose, my light. Am I still dimming? Am I fully turned on, or am I still holding back? And then from that place, I decide my strategies. But you understand that the strategies are going to be very different if my light is turned all the way on or if it's just 20% on.
Yes.
So that's why it's something that I think we are remembering, and a lot of us are like, oh yeah, I know that, whether it is in a previous lifetime or I know it's not supposed to be that hard. I know I'm not, it's not supposed to feel that heavy. And so just reconnecting to that and giving ourselves permission to explore another way is just such a gift.
Yes. And I think acknowledging, it was something that you had said, that we're women, and oftentimes a woman's process of building something, right, whether it's a business, a career, is not the same as a male's process. Our brains don't work the same. Our hormone systems don't work the same. And oftentimes, if you're doing something like a man, it's going to feel really misaligned energetically, but also it takes you out of that feminine power, and being able to I know for me, when I'm kind of gripping to the perfection and getting it all done, and my kids, to your point, right? Can I be a good mom? Actually, when I'm trying to hyper succeed and focus on things, my kids are so repelled by me because I'm not in my soft, feminine, playful mom. They're like, oh God, you are wound tighter than.
Go and meditate, Mom. So it's doctor's advice. Absolutely. Yeah,
But our
everybody.
clients will feel the same in a sense, right? Because I think kids are hyper aware of energy, but that's just because they haven't been like societally trained out of it. And so they're much more receptive to it. And I always say I kind of treat adults how I would approach a child, because we're all just big, where our
Yeah.
souls are kind of all the same. And
Yes.
if I connect with my kids, they want to hear what I have to say in a way that, like, if we're energetically connected before I start like barking orders, it's altogether different than if I'm just like, okay, here's what we got to do, guys. They want to feel connected and they want to feel my presence first. And I think that if we're that for our clients, we're giving them the space to succeed on their own, and
Yes.
it's more powerful.
Yeah, and isn't it crazy though that it's easier said than done because the conditioning runs so deep. And the truth is, we haven't seen our mothers and our grandmothers, our great grandmothers walking that, only because it just wasn't possible, right? They weren't able to speak their truth. A lot of them were forced to keep things together, keep peace, hold it together. You're the one that keep the kids happy. And so it was a lot of control and a lot of self-betrayal. And so that's what we've witnessed from the feminine, most of us. And so, this conversation is going to resonate at a cellular level, but also the mind is going to start spinning because the mind doesn't have any cues, any visual or energetic cues of that. We are the ones now. And I think that's why the RHS Summit always feels so great, because there's one thing that all of us have felt is this desire for a different approach, right? Like if we've explored IHP, it's all because we've tried the old and it didn't work. Well, in business, it's the same. And so if you are an IHP, you can bet that if you've tried the strategies, you're probably going bananas and burning out again. And you're like, how come I'm burning out? Now I know. And it's like, well, because there's this one element, and it's just allowing yourself to celebrate, especially if you're a woman, that, okay, I get to do it differently. And I get to believe that the energy and the invisible energies actually also have their roles in my strategy. It's so important, right? And that's why I shared also how, let's say on social media, if I bring that level of awareness on social media, then suddenly I'm not barking orders, to use your words, because most people are barking orders on social media. What is most repelling than that? Like, have you you need to eat your greens, and people are like, they don't want to be told like that. They don't want to, right? It's the mothering energy, which is actually the wounded masculine that is taking over our feminine energy. But that is not our true essence. And so if you're listening to this right now and you've been posting that, that's okay. Don't judge yourself, because we've all done it. But what you can start asking yourself is like, okay, if I drop into my heart, what is it that my ideal client, what is it that the version of me from a year and a half ago, what was she needing to finally hear? What was she like?
And how was she needing to hear it?
Yeah, it's like, how was she needing most of it on social media is validation. They just need to be validated. They just need to see that they're not going crazy. They just need to see that, they're not, because when you go in the medical system, you're told, you're a rare case or whatever. I mean, I've heard it all for me. And it's like, no, you're not. Right? Like just having this level of validation is actually what's going to magnetize people to lean in closer, and as opposed to being repelled and scrolling and going to the next person. It's that connection. And this is where the relatable and hard connection is not the same frequency at all. I can be in my full power, in my full leadership, maybe not fully relatable, but I'm in my heart. And so I'm able to have compassion. I'm able to remember how it felt, but I'm also going to pull you up. I'm going to pull you out of it because I don't believe that this is a finality anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Because it's not I could not agree more. I loved the way you reframed that. Could we touch upon something else that you said that, again, I think a lot of the other IHPs were like, ooh, yeah, okay, that's good. Which was a topic of like, so if because I think a lot of IHPs, or at least ones that I've talked to, are struggling with, who is my audience? Okay, maybe you don't want to quote unquote niche down, or that feels limiting, but I'm having a hard time figuring out who I'm talking to, right? So we did the 12 to 18 month ago version of yourself, but also this idea of what triggers you. So you kind of said like, so what topic is, triggering? Maybe it's, oh my gosh, um, I don't know, dyes, and, the fact that we still are, our food system is still putting dye in food, and, what
The lineup at Starbucks, that was your trigger this morning, right? Like the lineup at Starbucks. Yes, like that.
Yeah, and how you can use that to, I think you said like, what is still surprising you about what people are doing? And can you talk a little bit about that and how it can be a form of you being able to identify what would feel aligned for who and what you would speak to
Yes.
and about?
Yes. Okay. So triggers are messengers. And unfortunately, we haven't been taught to look at them like that. Most of us, we've been shown when you're triggered, you look the other way and you pretend you haven't seen it. But that's not how we change the world. And I know that IHPs, we want to contribute. We want to make the world a better place. And the only way to contribute is to focus on what is the change that you crave to see in the world. So your triggers are going to be really important indicators of that. So if you are triggered, let's say by, the dye, or what would be another example? Um,
Doctors telling you your symptoms are normal, or
okay, yeah. So if you're triggered, let's say you've had a family member who just had an encounter, and you can tell what's wrong with them and you can tell what they need, but they're listening to their physician, and their physician told them to take this pill and this pill, a pill for every ill. And you're going bananas. I know that happened to me. And you're like, oh my gosh, no, that's not what you need. You need this and that and that. You get really fired up. Well, that is a topic where you have like a vitality, like you have a life force, like you can literally feel a fire building inside of you. That's usually because there is a fire inside of you. And I'll just give you an example. Someone could be sitting next to me in the same conversation and not even blink an eye at the conversation and be like, oh, that's great. You have these pills. You'll feel better. Mm-hmm. They're not triggered by it because it's not a fire. It's not something that they carry. They don't have the antidote for it. Mm-hmm. I do. And that's why I'm triggered. So what is my job? My job is I cannot be sitting on the sidelines. Now, the thing is, I might not be able to help this particular person because she might already be set, but that person is mirroring to me the other people in the collective that are going through a similar experience, that are needing to hear my voice and needing to hear what I have as solutions and antidotes to this. And so that would be a good example of, starting to use my lived experience, the stories of my life on my social media to share. You guys, I was so activated by this, and it reminded me how, this conversation is so important, right? And so it actually gets to be that easy. Mm-hmm. When I realized that not everyone gets triggered on the same things, it's kind of silly, but it's a massive deal. When I realized by sitting in mentorship groups and communities to be like, okay, wait a minute, you didn't blink on what she just said? No, but why am I so rallied up? And it's because, well, either it's something I meant to bring to the world, or it's something that I see in that person that also is available for me that I've not allowed myself to fully claim. So, people get really triggered on social media by, the level of success, the money, the fame, whatever, the visibility, and usually if you get triggered by that, it's just because it's available for you too. Just go for it. That's usually what it is. And that's why people don't get triggered on the same things. It's because we're not all meant to be doing the same things, even within IHPs.
Right. Yes. Which just goes to show that we all have our own uniqueness, in the sense of, because I think a lot of IHPs can get bogged down of we all know the same thing. It's too saturated. It's too competitive. But again, when you are the only you, until yes. you are fully showing up as your aligned, authentic self, that then there's no one else that is anything like you. So there you go.
That's how you set yourself apart. That's it. And isn't it so crazy that we've been told it's got to look a certain way for success when in fact it's not that at all. The only way to stand out as an IHP is to be yourself, right? That, like you just said. And I always give the analogy when I hear this, because I work with a lot of coaches and people on the online space, and they'll tell me, well, someone else is talking about this, or they'll say, well, there's already so many coaches. And I'm like you just said, yes, but nobody has your particular story. Nobody says it with the context that you have. Nobody has your lens. And so there's something that you see that maybe the others don't see. And so I like to always give the example of like, all of us IHPs, when we're all together, we create this big puzzle that's complete. But we require each piece of the puzzle in order to be complete. Like some of you are really good with hormones, and some of you are really good with, adrenals, and some of you are specialized in sports performance, and some of you are specialized in longevity, and some in thyroid and kids and detox and, like mold. If we didn't have everyone really owning their unique codes. If everyone was trying to just teach, IHP to everyone, then we would be defeating the purpose. That's not the idea. It's together that we can trust that we each add our piece to the puzzle. And it's only when we remember that we were never meant to be it for everyone.
Yeah.
We were never that is ridiculous. Like the type of pressure, we're never meant to be it for everyone. So you just have to be you fully dialed on. That's it. That's your job as an HP. When you were talking, I had the example. I think it's a good example, like the food babe, the one who went and fought against Kellogg and all. Okay, well, here's something that she was so triggered like no one else. And she rallied this whole group and went to the government and went to court and to create, it's insane what she created. And now Kellogg just is removing the dyes and cereals and there's massive shifts that are being done. But if she had not been triggered, I'm talking a visceral triggered, then we would all be here with our kids eating cereal. Well, hopefully nobody here is eating Kellogg cereals, but you know what I mean? Nobody would be, kids would be less exposed to these dyes. So you can use that as an example, as proof of concept that, okay, yeah, I didn't get triggered that much. I probably would never have done what she did because it's not my battle.
Yes. Yes. And I think the overarching theme too is being really in tune to again, your fires, what you feel, because I think a lot of listeners might be like, okay, what does trigger me? Okay, this triggers me, that triggers me. But if they never heard the suggestion to think about their triggers, right, they might just think, okay, this makes me feel really angry, but anger is not a good emotion, right? All the feelings mean something. And I think we've been so taught to just keep going, do your things, check your checklist, keep moving. And we forget that feeling is oftentimes one of the most impactful things that we can do to decide where we need to go next. And yes. I think we've been deconditioned for so many reasons to not do that.
Exactly. And our body, especially as IHPs, if there's one thing we got to understand as we build our business is we know, we are the ones that should know that our body is our sacred technology. I take all my business decisions based on my body. And if I don't, I pay the price. So if something feels heavy in my body, I know it's because there's a lighter alternative, but I have to have the courage of saying no to what is traditionally being done by everyone and look at what else is available for me that would feel light. That's literally how I make my decisions in my business. And I feel as IHPs, it is our responsibility to use our body in that way. It is our antenna. It is how we transmit. It's how we receive, but it's also how we know, how we connect with that inner knowing of what's right for us, what's in alignment. And so if we, have all this knowledge, and then we get back into the head trying to make this knowledge make something mean about us, because that's often why things are not working, then we're defeating the purpose. We're IHPs. We're supposed to be in the body. We need to be embodying this. to a whole other level, not just in our lifestyle, not just in the way we eat, not just in the way we work out, but in the way we run our business. And that's called coherence.
Yes.
Coherence is like so underrated in business, but like coherence and integrity to coherence is so important. So, if I take care of my body in this way by, hydrating and moving and meditating and doing these things, but I'm putting my body through hell in my business, well, of course, people can feel something is off. You haven't said anything wrong. It just feels off. And that's because you're off. You're offbeat. You're not coherent. So it really, you might be triggered as you're like, people listening might be triggered right now. And if you are triggered, hallelujah. That's because there's a message for you here that maybe you have been avoiding. And it's really just, oh, yeah, that and that and that has been feeling so heavy. It like, I don't want to wake up in the morning because I think of that. Okay, well, it's time to delegate.
Yes. Delegate as in figure out if it needs to be done, who can do it so that it doesn't feel so heavy.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Or maybe there's a better way that doesn't involve that thing anymore at all.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all about getting comfortable with too, because again, I think like if we're talking about old stories that we've kind of believed through generations of, in order for it to be success, it has to feel hard. We have to grind. We have to. And, there was definitely like a little bit of lineage of like martyrdom in my family where it was like, no, I'll do it. Oh no, I'll do it. I can take one more thing.
Oh my gosh. I think everyone can relate to this because that's the generation, like the two generations really, it's like we're talking many generations before us, especially on the maternal side. So yes.
Yes.
But can you see how that would be out of coherence as an IHP to be running your business like this? Because we're trying to bring more life force into the body. Mm-hmm. We're trying to basically remove physical distortion and energetic distortion. Well, all of those stories of martyr and victim, and if not, like for me, my dad was an entrepreneur all his life, and I never saw him because he was working all the time. Like he would leave at 6 a.m. and come back at 10 p.m. And so for me, I've made the connection that in order to make money and be successful, it's got to bleed. It's got to be like, you got to sacrifice yourself, basically. And it took me a while to be like, but wait a minute, that's not the truth. Like, that's not possible because no. So I had to rewire that. And that is part of the healing of the body as well. Because that's crystallized in the body. These thoughts, these emotions, they're stuck in the body. So we got to walk the talk. We got to go first. As IHPs, if we're not going first, then our business is going to be an extension of that.
Yes. Yeah. And by going first, we inspire our clients to then do the same. And yeah,
it's sort of the, it's sort of the invisible commitment we made by choosing to be an IHP. Mm-hmm. It's yes, you learn the things. Yes, you get the certificate. Yes, you get the letters after your name, but ultimately you have chosen to go first. Mm-hmm. And you have chosen to go first in a world that doesn't really understand what the heck we're doing. Mm-hmm. In a world that also doesn't fully value it just yet. But your job is to not carve in, to stay strong. Because the more IHPs are standing in this as pillar of lights, the more we create a constellation that's going to light up the world, right? But if we're still, playing the victim and like, oh, it's hard, then that's not magnetic. That's not light.
Yeah. And if you're doubting any of what you just said, being in the room at the Reimagining Health Summit, there's no denying, like even the whole several days, right? Just like being in a hotel with the same kind of energy is, it was, can be electric if you're,
that's the constellation of light coming together and then kind of leaving. And like, then we leave and we ignite everywhere we go. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's really amazing about what we do.
Yes. If people are kind of wanting to connect further, where are all the places that you show up, whether it be social media or, Yes.
Yeah, on Instagram, that's where I hang out the most. So vanessa.grutman. You can also visit my website, goldenalchemist.com. That's the movement I've created, where we alchemize all these limiting thoughts of the mind and we turn them into our gold in our business, in our life, in our leadership. So yeah, that's where I hang out. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. I think so many of our listeners will really resonate with everything that you came here to offer, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. And if you did, come and say hello in my DMs and come and let me know. That always, again, that heals me.
Yeah, and lights you further. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Vanessa.
Thank you.